What's up, everyone? We are here to talk full spoilers about Star Wars: The Last Jedi. We have seen the movie. If you haven't seen the movie yet, what are you doing watching this thing? It's called Spoilercast. Bookmark it, come back, watch it then, because we're diving right into everything that happened in Star Wars: The Last Jedi, starting with our reactions to the film. Now, Joshua, you are the standing reviewer of the film. In a nutshell, tell us, what did you think of the movie?
I thought it was thrilling, emotional, surprisingly funny, and the best Star Wars movie since Empire Strikes Back.
And what was your score for the movie?
It was a 9.7
And we only go up to 10.
We only go up to 10.
So there we go. The man loved it.
Yes.
David, what'd you think?
I also enjoyed it. I thought it was very entertaining. I have a few reservations about the film, but overall, I had a good time. And of the new crop of Star Wars films, the new canon after Disney purchased Lucasfilm, this is my favorite of all of them so far. I had a great time in this. Like Joshua said, I had some laughs, some cheers, and yeah, I really enjoyed myself.
Yeah, I agree. I also really enjoyed the movie. You know, it's great to have Star Wars back, and that so far, you know, issues with each of the previous two new films, Force Awakens and Rogue One aside, they all have issues, even the old films. I think this one is probably in many ways the strongest, but like you were saying, David, I also have some reservations about the film, some things that didn't quite work as well. So we're going to get into those differences now. So let's start with the one thing that's been kind of thrown at this movie from the get-go by virtue of being the second in the trilogy. Ever since people saw the first trailer, they were like, it's just going to rip off Empire the way Force Awakens ripped off A New Hope. I don't think it did. I don't think this is necessarily an out-and-out Empire ripoff. I think it's a weird melding of both Empire and Return of the Jedi. I think there's a lot more of Jedi in this movie than I was expecting. What do you guys think? Is Last Jedi just Empire Strikes Back warmed over?
I think it did enough differently to make it stand out on its own. I mean, especially, you know, towards the end of the movie, you know, with, you know, we're going to talk, of course, about Rey and Kylo, and a lot of those scenes there, like, you thought it was going to go one way, where you're like, wow, this looks a lot like, I mean, you have Snoke in the chair, Rey and Kylo, you know, looks like Luke and Vader facing each other, and it's like, that looks a lot like Return of the Jedi, but then it kind of turns it on its head a little bit and does something different. So I feel like Rian Johnson did enough to stand out from the previous films, but you can't help but draw comparisons.
Yeah, Rian Johnson is a super fan of Star Wars, and you could tell he understood the criticisms of all the preceding films, including Force Awakens, and he kind of predicted what people were going to be thinking about The Last Jedi, and he used that to kind of set up things that were familiar, but then instead of zigging, he zagged and completely shattered expectations. And that's why I think I had so much fun watching this movie. Like, even, for example, Empire started with Hoth, right? That attack on the Rebel base with the walkers. This one ends with that, but instead of making a daring escape, it's their last stand, right? So it's familiar. There's like the walkers and everything, but the emotions and the stakes and the context of everything else is different. So I think if you're going to do little homages and winks and stuff to the past, you do it like that.
Well, I mean, one of the themes and something that Kylo Ren says several times in the movie is, like, you know, basically burn away the past, destroy the past. You know, and I think there's that little moment in the movie, and we'll talk more about Kylo Ren and Rey in a minute, but, you know, where Kylo has a chance to kill Leia, blow up her ship, and he doesn't take it, which I kind of read as a little bit of a meta commentary of, like, destroy your past. Well, maybe not all of it. We like a lot of the you know, the kind of the backstory and the legacy of those characters. So I thought that Last Jedi did a pretty good job of taking things that you recognize from Return of the Jedi and from Empire and kind of doing something new with them. You know, there are a lot of, like, cute little creatures that seem kind of like a callback to Jedi being so cute. The stakes, like the last stand of the rebellion sort of in Return of the Jedi, is pretty much where they end up at with Crate. So yeah, I think that there's more humor in this one that saves it from being as sort of as heavy as Empire seemed. Even though Empire has a lot of humor in there, I think people forget that it has humor. But yeah, so we don't think it's necessarily an Empire knockoff. What did you guys think? Let us know in the comments. Let's move on to a character who is very evokes memories of Empire very much and Jedi, and that is Snoke. I mean, he is basically this new trilogy's answer to Palpatine. Or was he? Because Palpatine at least made it a few movies. This guy made it through about halfway through, and halfway is pretty enough for a guy like Snoke. So yeah, they kill off Snoke. They kill off basically their Emperor Palpatine. What did you guys think of the character of Snoke? I'm pretty much of the mind that I have no idea still who this guy is. What was his backstory? How did so many people in this galaxy know of this guy, and let him rise, but nobody seemed to do anything kind of about him? Like to me, there's so many more unanswered questions about his character, and then for him to just get killed off like that halfway through, it was almost like Rian Johnson kind of cleaning house of some of J.J. Abrams' creations from the first movie.
Ooh,
like,
you think so?
I don't really think I need this guy after all. Let's just get right to where we all know this is going.
No, I think Snoke served his purpose. And I do admit that, yes, there are a lot of burning questions of, like, who is he? He's so old. He was clearly around at the time of the original trilogy and even the prequels.
Yeah.
But I think where they will dive into that is, like, the comics, the novels, maybe a video game or something. And on one hand, I feel like, that sucks that we'll never find out kind of in the movies. But I'm also fine with that because I think he just serves a narrative purpose he's the one who corrupted Kylo Ren. But I think as you were saying, Kylo Ren, he was all about, like, let's get rid of the past, let's kill it. They literally got rid of sort of a Star Wars trope of, like, the robed, all-powerful evil figure. So now when we get to the third installment, no one can be like, oh, it's going to be just like Return of the Jedi because there's no emperor-like figure. But Snoke himself, I thought, was great. I love how Rian Johnson handled Snoke, and the second Rey walks in there, she is a puppet on a string. She has essentially no, like, will of her own. He's throwing her around with the Force. She tries to.
She really is like a puppet on a string. The way he treats her.
Yeah. She tries to grab back the lightsaber from his chair, and he just zips it around and smacks her in the head with it and takes it back. Like, he is completely toying with her, and he is all powerful, right? So, and even though. And clearly he has the power of, like, prophecy of looking forward, but his one flaw is that he was so confident he didn't understand what he was seeing, which was his own death. And I thought that was great.
Yeah, I mean, did you guys buy the whole you just pointed out that he could rip that lightsaber back, like, missing the sort of obvious thing, or?
I think it takes away from his character a little bit because he's supposed to be the ultimate bad guy, the ultimate villain, like Emperor Palpatine, who, I mean, to be fair, was destroyed by his overconfidence. He didn't see Vader's inner turmoil at the time, which allowed him to, toss him over the rafters there. So, but I just feel like I wanted him to go out a different way. I wanted to see at least a battle and not a moment of trickery. And I think that's what bothered me about the scenes because I wanted to see Snoke in action. I wanted to see, and I get they're probably gonna do a book or a comic book or down the road, but I don't like that. It's like, oh, just read the book. It's like, no, put a little something to show how powerful he actually is. If he can just toss, Rey around like she's nothing, then let's see. I don't know. I want to see him and Kylo fight it out or something.
I think his thing is you can't fight that. How do you fight that? Who's never going to whip out a lightsaber and start jumping around? And if he did, and did like an Emperor Palpatine-esque flip, like
with the Yoda fight,
and like he did in Revenge of the Sith, I would have pulled my hair out. So I'm really glad they found a different way to combat a character who I think is beyond fighting with a lightsaber.
Well, I mean, there's also just real quick. I mean, he also. He was the one that was able to kind of bring them together, Kylo Ren and Rey, and make them kind of be able to see each other and kind of reach out to each other. So it does seem a little weird that he then couldn't see that thing, but I guess, it's just his overconfidence.
They've never really, I do think it's overconfidence, but they never really say what visions look like. Even Rey had a Force vision of the future and that Kylo had been turned, but clearly she didn't, I don't think it was as clear as what maybe we're imagining. It's not like being painted a really clear picture. It's something you have to interpret. And clearly Snoke did see what was happening with a lightsaber in his future and that it was going to play a very important role. But he didn't realize that it was going to be at his expense.
All right, well, we want to know, what did you guys think of Supreme Leader Snoke? See, I did it to myself. What did you think of Snoke, how they handled him, how they got rid of him? Let us know. Let's move on to the other two characters in that big scene, the most important characters, frankly, in this new trilogy, Rey and Kylo Ren. Let's start with Rey. Did we like how they resolved the question of her parents, at least as far as we understand it, an answer that was provided to her by Kylo Ren? Did we like that it turns out her parents are basically nobodies?
Yeah, you do have to take it with a grain of salt, what he was saying, right? But I believed him. I feel like there'll always be maybe something a little up in the air to like, was he saying something to manipulate her? But I do believe that was a moment of honesty. And she had to admit it to herself of, yes, you know, my parents, they discarded me, they got rid of me. She really is just nobody, but not to me, says Kylo Ren.
Yeah.
So I do think that, and I like that. I like that she's not a Skywalker or a Kenobi, and she's somehow has this like path of destiny that she has to stay on because of her legacy. I just like that she's a random character in the galaxy who happens to be strong in the Force, and she's rising up to use that power.
Although Star Wars does have a history of people lying to the kid about who their parents are.
This is very true, but I felt a moment of sincerity there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if Joshua was correct, and I agree with him, if it's correct that Kylo was telling the truth, I like that idea, because I don't think everybody has to descend from somebody famous or important or have this very important bloodline. I know that was Luke's destiny, but if I remember correctly, this is going to be testing my Lord of the Rings knowledge, you know, Frodo was nobody, you know, necessarily important in the term of his bloodline, you know, except for his uncle. So I like the fact that Rey is her own person, and she's going to forge her own destiny, you know, away from her family, because sometimes that's the sad truth of life. Sometimes kids just get dropped off and left behind and sold for money, and I like that story. I feel like it's more dynamic, more
it's a very Dickensian sort of
Yeah, it's a tragic story. It's a very tragic story.
Well, it also ties into, at the very end of the movie, the little boy picking up using the Force to get the broom, and he's just a stable boy, an orphan, and that the resistance will go on, that she's a new hope. But, it's to me, I think it's very interesting that they do sort of just say, look, we're going to, they're making almost a political statement there too, of saying like, anybody can rise up and be a hero. It's not just the special people born into it. So yeah, I think that's interesting now, because Kylo Ren, I mean, he's born into this famous family, and look what happened to him. So I think that's kind of an interesting commentary there. What did we think of their sort of how that relationship played out between them? Because, I mean, you get a lot of people shipping them. They have been since the first movie.
Reylo.
But I think that I liked that she initially just cannot stand this guy, doesn't want to deal with him, and then she's kind of like, I do see a glimmer of hope in him, and she still does, even by the end. Did you like that?
I thought that was the most fascinating, daring, and like controversial part of the movie. Because she does see him as a monster, and he killed Han Solo, right? Yet she, by the end of the movie, she does see good in him. She had her own, she had her Force vision and saw that he was going to turn. But again, I think she was a little naive and just excited to like rush to him and try and turn him, even though. I don't think he was ready for that, right? So, but yeah, the fact that there was clearly, so you can read it in two ways. It's two like damaged people who sort of have just an emotional bond, like when they touch, especially, or is there like a romance there? You're the romance expert. What did you see? What did you detect?
I do enjoy a good romance. So the romantic aspects of Last Jedi confused me a little bit. So I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but if you look at the way Rey looked at Finn and Rose together. Now, I couldn't tell if that was a look that she was jealous, because I think you see Finn kind of moving the blanket on Rose to cover her up, to keep her warm. And like, I can't tell, when they hugged, is that like a friend hug, a close friend hug, or is there something more than that?
It's Finn and the friend
are they setting up a love rectangle? Or square, I should say, for episode 9, once we get a little bit more into the relationship between Rey and Kylo. I don't know what they're doing. It's complicated.
There's also Rey and Poe. There is that little look at the end when they hug each other. I read a little something. They're both possibly the future of this whole thing, but it doesn't mean. I don't think if she ends up a Jedi, she's not going to end up with anybody. She's going to be her own thing. I mean, look, Jedis ain't getting much loving, I think.
I think that's a problem with the Jedi, is that they forbid loving, and so I feel like she'll need to buck that trend and yet embrace.
Get rid of the past. The Jedi must end.
Forget that. But let's go back to.
Sorry.
No, please,
I was gonna say, don't forget about the old. I know it's the old canon, the old stories. Don't forget about Luke did marry. He married. Mira was her name, I believe.
Mara Jade.
Mara Jade, married as well. So I hope they get rid of that whole old teaching of like you can't marry. You have to be completely the whole priest-like nature of the Jedi Order and do something.
Although
different.
it is interesting you bring that up. I'm no EU expert, but they are basically kind of pulling a lot from the EU for Kylo Ren. He is sort of like, what is it, Darth Caedus or whatever, who was like Luke's and Mara's son, and he kills Mara, right? It's kind of the same kind of thing that they're doing. I think that's what happened. Don't go after me.
Can I just do a real quick nerd thing before we go off on a tangent? In an episode of Star Wars Rebels, which is part of the new canon, one of the opening scrawls was, there is truth. There's always a bit of truth in legends, which I love. That was kind of harkening back to the legend stories that aren't around anymore. Not the canon, but there is truth from there. So we might see some of those stories play out in the future.
So okay, to the Kylo Ren and Rey of it all, do we think she can redeem him? Is he redeemable? We really thought he wasn't after what happened with Han, but we see in this movie more of why he ended up with Snoke, sort of a misunderstanding. We'll get more into the Luke Skywalker of it all in a minute, but his journey sort of began because Luke lost faith in him. He had this vision, and so even though Snoke was clearly getting his hooks into Kylo, again going back to Snoke, like I would have liked to have seen more of how did that happen right under your noses, but do we think that there is Kylo Ren redeemable? Is Ben Solo redeemable? She seems to think so, but I don't know. What do you think?
I've been struggling with this a lot, and before the start of this movie, I would have said no. At the end, I'm thinking maybe it's a possibility, but it's just I wouldn't want to see him be redeemed and then get a happy ending. Do you know what I mean? I feel like if he were to be redeemed, he would really have to pay for it.
Yeah, redemption by death.
Yeah, I mean that's what happened to Vader. Like we were okay with Vader at the end, essentially because he died. I think he kind of like paid the price. And did something with his life by the end, killing the Emperor.
Well, that would be the ultimate lesson from finishing what he started. What do you think, David?
I think that I hope that he's not redeemed, because I feel like, because we talked about how this movie differentiates itself enough from the previous films where it stands on its own. If they did redeem him, even if he was redemption by death, it would feel too much like Return of the Jedi, I think. I hope that he has a difference, or either he remains the villain, which I think would be interesting. Maybe he even gets away at the end. Maybe he doesn't die, or nothing really bad happens to him. I think that would be interesting too. Or maybe he's cast off and isolated on his own, and he has to live out like a kind of a isolated prison sentence. I mean, something different from what Return of the Jedi
kind of
did.
like a Ben Kenobi thing.
The Ben Kenobi, he's going to go off and destroys everything.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, no happy ending.
Yeah.
I mean, even Leia says like my son is lost. Like, so she's given up hope on him. Rey is really the only, and Luke Skywalker does the whole brush off thing. Like, literally, Rey is the only one that seems to care about this guy, and care is pushing it. I think she's interested in the idea of there being good left in somebody.
Wait, before we move on from Rey and Kylo, we have to talk about that lightsaber fight.
Oh my God, that was so cool. That was like the best, I think, the best lightsaber.
That's when and it's weird because it wasn't a lightsaber duel. Two lightsabers never actually touched in this movie, so it's the first Star Wars movie without a traditional lightsaber fight. Yeah. But them fighting Snoke's Praetorian Guard was so crazy. Like when the lightsaber just flew over to her and she reaches up and like snatches it out of the air. They go back to back and then they oh my God!
And I love the over the shoulder.
All the teamwork was great.
That was great.
I love the variety of weapons that the guards had, like the whip and the different sword. Like I love the weapons.
Was so cool. Yeah, that was probably, and that was a great example of them doing something new. Like we all expect, lightsaber battles and stuff like that in the Star Wars movie, but it was fan service without being so heavily tied to nostalgia. Now a whole generation of kids are going to grow up. That's going to be their template for a kick-ass lightsaber battle.
Yeah, I thought they did it just right. Although actually, if I had one critique, I would love to have seen the guards rough up both Rey and Kylo a little more. Like they both get, I think Rey gets like a cut on her arm, but that's about it.
Yeah.
But they were severely outnumbered. I would like to if them been kind of their backs to the wall a little bit more before they turn it around and take them out. But it was crazy. And then we also have to talk about what their sort of their final moment together, where he makes the offer to her. And then she's like, no, we can't do this. Like this is not the way forward. And then they fight over the lightsaber, and just that epic shot of like the Force gusting winds away from them from the pressure of them fighting over this lightsaber.
The lightsaber bursts apart,
and snapping it in half. She takes the pieces because she has them at the end. So here's my theory: they set it up in The Force Awakens that she has the staff, right? So I think she'll take the lightsaber crystal out of it, make a blue double-bladed lightsaber.
Oh, nice.
And we all go crazy.
Yeah. Awesome. Wow. Yeah, you've left me speechless, because now I'm just thinking, wow, I really want to see that happen. We want to know, what did you guys think of Kylo Ren and Rey, that whole thing, how they handle it, where they're going, all that jazz. Let's move on to the man really at the center of both their lives in this movie. Luke Skywalker, Mark Hamill finally back as Luke Skywalker. You just had that little moment at the end of Force Awakens, but I don't think he's ever been better as Luke Skywalker. As an actor and as a character, Luke Skywalker had really evolved in this movie, and Mark Hamill's performance is probably the best one he's ever given. What did you guys think?
I absolutely loved Mark Hamill. I think this is one of the greatest performances he's ever done. I mean, even outside of his voiceover work as a Joker, he's just you could just sense his conflict. I mean, this is a guy who's seen it all. You know, we've seen the death of his father, of his mentor in Yoda, of Obi-Wan, of his uncle and Aunt Peru. You know, I mean, he's seen so much tragedy, and he has this look, a kind of look that I've always had about the light and the dark side. Like, there's no such thing as like purely good and purely evil. There's all this gray area, and he kind of acknowledges that. He says, like, what right do the Jedi have over all this? Like, the Force is going to exist whether we're here or not. Like, the Jedi don't do something, they can control things with the Force, but they don't own the Force. You know, it's not theirs to give. It's nature, it's life. It's going to be there without us. So I love this whole kind of broken philosophy, this guy who's been a hermit living on an island in isolation for years. And I wish we could have explored that more, but of course it's just, like a 2.5 hour movie, so we have to move on. But I hope we get a separate comic book or a novel with just Luke and learning about his story while he's on that island, kind of just being conflicted by his own demons.
Oh, so
I love
now
that.
you want
Yeah,
the
I was
comics.
just
Earlier
thinking,
you
wow,
didn't.
you're
Oh no, I'm going back on what I said. Oh no, hypocrite. Yeah, yeah. Oh no.
I loved him so much. This was his finest performance. Mark Hamill's finest performance as Luke, and just that he put so much like pain in his eyes, and just even just his voice of just like I've seen power like this once before in Ben Solo. It didn't scare me then, it does now. You know, just like that. And just also, can we just talk about when he gets handed the lightsaber? And we've all been wondering for years what he was gonna do with it, right? What's the first thing he says? He throws it off the cliff. Oh my God! That's what I knew this movie was going to be different, and it was going to play things. It was going to defy expectations, and it was also going to be very, very funny. Because goodness, that really threw me for a loop. My jaw was on the floor when that happened. But yeah, it was very much very different from Yoda, right? Who at first was just being adversarial or being kind of kooky and unhelpful, but then he turns and shows who he really is. But Luke, it took him a really long time to get to that point where he actually wanted to help Rey. And in a weird way, his way of helping, he was like, I'm going to teach you, but it's to show you why this is all a bad idea. So the dynamic there was very different. Him and Rey playing off each other, I thought was great.
Yeah.
Like him and
Thing
Daisy
with the
Ridley.
twig, where she's like, reach out, you feel that? It's
Yeah.
not the Force.
Yeah, I feel it.
There's so many great, like, warm moments like that, and also, again, just like really funny moments like that. So yeah, Luke.
And he's a hell of a spearfisher.
Yeah,
That was a heck of a spear. That was huge.
Yeah, looking at his daily routine was really weird. But yeah, just really, he's trying to be like just kind of gross and like he's trying to like onerous. You know, he was trying to create shatter what she sees Luke to be, and just try and make himself as undesirable as possible to make her go away.
Well, he's a man obviously in conflict with his own legend. He talks about that at one point of like, oh, it's the great Jedi Master Luke Skywalker, and look what happened. Like I love that he's a hero who's basically rejecting his own story in a way. What did you guys think of the sort of? Okay, let me flip this around. I loved when R2 shows up and it starts playing the Leia footage from New Hope, and he's like, "That's a cheap move."
Yeah.
It was Rian Johnson totally acknowledging that it was a cheap move, but it works because it brings him back to like, this is the thing that made you want to be Luke Skywalker to begin with, and it's his sister, obviously, and she needs him now more than ever. What did you guys think of that, and Yoda coming back for the, go out there and win one for the Gipper pep talk at the end,
I love seeing Yoda because I love Yoda, but the Force Ghost thing, it's like, okay, so like when do they show up? Like when can they show up? How much power do they have? Yoda actually interacts with the physical world in the sense that he, brings lightning down to burn the old little tree hut there.
Nice to show up 10 years ago and pull him out of that slump.
And then it brings, I don't want to get too into this and go down a rabbit's hole, but then he could bring up the question like, well, why didn't Anakin show up and speak to Kylo? Is it like, can dark side people not see, the Force Ghost, that whole kind of thing? So as happy as I was to see Yoda, I would like some more explanation of like how Force Ghosts interact with the real world.
Right.
It's a small thing, but
I think, well, obviously the Force works in mysterious ways, and you can never really, they can do crazy things, as we saw in this movie, things we've never seen before. But I think asking for an explanation is just like asking for, it's like one of those greater questions of the universe, like where did life come from? Why do we exist? Like it's one of those things. I think the Force falls into that.
Don't push the writers.
Right.
But yeah, I do think the Force Ghost appearance has to be like circumstantial, and only certain characters can see them, and only at certain times. I don't think it's like a phone call where you can just be like, "Oh, hey Obi-Wan, hey Ben, could you just like show up real quick so we can have a talk?" Like I don't think it's like that.
That would be
interesting. I think he appeared to Luke at a very important pivotal moment, and it had a purpose, and the fact that he can manipulate the lightning again, I think it's just the forces can move in mysterious ways.
What did we think of the death of Luke Skywalker?
Oh my gosh, that was so emotional, and people have been asking why that happened, and I think the
why he disappears.
Why he disappears? I think it's that it was
exertion. Was he just like?
I think that's what it is. He put everything he had into that Force illusion, and then also I think it was sort of his time. Like he was at the end of his journey, and then he evaporated into the Force.
He had said in the movie, one, I went to that island to die, and two, that he had cut himself off from the Force. So it's almost like if you gave up, it's a bad analogy, but like if you gave up a bad habit and then you fell off the wagon, like the amount of damage that could probably do, like to go on that kind of a bender, frankly, like it could probably kill you, you know? So he had Force poisoning is what I'm saying.
Yeah, but I thought the moment of his passing was it was so beautiful. And of course, there's the callback to the binary sunset that he sees.
Right there.
Oh my God! Going right back to the beginning of his journey, a nice bookend there.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was so beautiful. And also, I loved his voiceover at the end of like, yeah, you will not. What Frody says, you will not win this day. I am not the last Jedi.
Yeah.
I thought that worked really well. Something also we'd never see in Star Wars, the way that was shot, of like a voiceover while showing a little montage.
Yeah.
I thought that all that was done like really, really well. So I thought he did a perfect send off.
So
it was a powerful scene, like you said, with the twin sons, just because you think about Luke and the first Star Wars movie, and he just wanted to go into Tosche Station to pick up some power converters. And, he had all these hopes and dreams of becoming more than, getting off this planet. That whole look of Rey in The Force Awakens, looking off and seeing ships going away. Like there's got to be something more out there for me. And then, but at what cost? It costs you a lot. I mean, Lord of the Rings thing again. When you go on these big journeys, people die, stuff goes wrong. I mean, you're going to live a life, but it's going to be a life that's going to be a hard-lived life.
That is interesting that he spends the first movie wanting to get out of the middle of nowhere and go see things, and in this movie, he wants to stay in the middle of nowhere and not see a damn thing. Like, it is kind of, it's an interesting thing to see this guy kind of turn his back on everything. Are we happy that in the end he sees that the Jedi need a place? Because to me, I thought he made some convincing arguments that the Jedi weren't really, they lost most of the time, and they weren't all that. Like they screwed up a lot too. Do we really need the Jedi back, or do we just need one good person like Rey who can, be there in a pinch to kind of help show the way?
It's complex because it's been addressed in so many different ways over the years, and obviously in the lore and the books. I mean, I know during the Clone Wars, a lot of the writers of those stories didn't like that the Jedi were generals and leaders in the military. They're not supposed to be military leaders. You know, they're priests in a way. You know, kind of protecting and nurturing the Force and teaching people about that skill. But they're not meant to be, you know, meant to fight people. Like Yoda always say, like never attack, you know, only in defense if somebody attacks you. So I don't know. I don't think there needs to be a big army of Jedi. I think maybe do the rule of two thing, like the Sith kind of did. Maybe keep it small.
Well, that worked out well.
Yeah, that's true. That didn't work out well. That's true. I guess I wouldn't know what to do with
It's
the
just
Jedi.
going to be Rey and that little kid at the end.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah, the rule of two.
Hey,
Yep.
she could use a Padawan. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
We want to know, what did you think of how they handled Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi? Did you like his death scene? Did you like what they did with his character and what it meant? Let us know in the comments. You mentioned that Jedi shouldn't be warriors. Well, Princess Leia, now General Leia Organa, she uses the Force in this movie in a big old way. Talk about some fan service. What did we think about that, what they did with Princess... I'm sorry, she's Princess Leia to me. What they did with Leia, and we'll get to this in a moment, and what we thought of Carrie Fisher's final performance. So let's start with the first part of that. What did you think of Leia finally really throwing down and using the Force? And in that particular scene, Joshua, let's start with you.
That was another jaw-dropping moment because it was so early on in the film that, and yeah, she gets sucked out into space, and you think she's dead, and you're like, oh my God, is this her fate? Was this always? Was this either what they changed because Carrie Fisher passed away and they can't use her anymore, or was this always her story? Was it never a big part in this movie? Oh my God! But then she was alive, and the Force works in mysterious ways, and I think it was really smart. And I love Rian Johnson for this, that he found a way to have Leia use the Force, as a lot of fans have wanted to see her do, but not in a way we've ever seen before. But it's like it was just like a protective way, and of a sort of a reactive. It wasn't like she actively chose to do that. I think she just was in a moment of need and like reached out to her natural gift and used that to recover. Like I don't even know if she knew she could do that. Like I thought it was almost like a miracle that happened, and so I thought it was great. And yeah, a lot of people I know have been wanting to see her do something like that. So I thought this was perfect.
David?
I thought it was a memorable performance because in The Force Awakens, she felt a little bit rusty. I know she's not acting as much as she used to in the past, and it was nice to see her just give this great performance. Also, it's tragic because we won't see her in another one after this, and especially just knowing that her daughter is a part of the film as well. And it's a family. Star Wars is all about family, and whether I have some gripes with the movie or not, I mean, it's been a part of my life since I was a little kid, and so I mean, not having Princess Leia, General Leia around anymore, it's sad. And I thought Carrie Fisher went out on a high note. I think that was her best performance, I think, that she's done in any of the films.
And I think it's due in part to Rian Johnson, again, working with Carrie Fisher, who was an acclaimed writer. If you guys didn't know that, she was a great novelist, and she was incredibly funny. A lot of comedians loved her. She was... And you see that in this performance, that she worked with Rian Johnson on her character, and this was a perfect marriage of Leia and Carrie Fisher, and finding that wry humor, that sort of sardonic edge to her a little bit that Princess Leia always had. You know, she could be a smartass from New Hope on. You know, and so to see that at that particular moment in her life was really cool. I love that they didn't just make her general exposition and we're going to sit here and talk about the mission. Like, she had those scenes. I thought they did a little too much of that with her in Force Awakens, and I think that's why she seemed kind of rusty, is she didn't really have much to play in that movie. You know, this one definitely got into the essence of not only of who Leia is, but also like who Carrie Fisher was and what she can bring to the role. So I thought it was like this being Luke's best performance. I think this was her best performance. Although, I mean, I still love her in Empire Strikes Back, but I think this was a great kind of send off for that character. We're not gonna, just so you guys know, we're not gonna get into how are they gonna handle her character in Episode 9. We're gonna do a completely separate thing on that. So we're gonna save that speculation for another day.
Can I say one more thing? When Leia and Luke and Luke's Force illusion met, I just started crying, you guys.
Kiss on the head. Come on, that was beautiful. Yeah.
That was a beautiful moment. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I thought that Leia's character in particular, though, in this one, you know, you get a sense of she is really the only thing keeping the Resistance together. As important as a character like Poe Dameron is, or Admiral Holdo, like Leia is the leader, and we see just how little of the Resistance is left. So it's going to be really interesting to kind of see where the Resistance goes from here. But again, we're going to talk about all that in another thing at another time. Overall, any final thoughts on the handling of Leia in this particular movie? Were you, what did you think of the moment where Kylo Ren and her sort of had their almost psychic force kind of bond, as he has a chance to blow up her ship and he doesn't take it? What did you think of their kind of moment?
It's just the conflict. They're leaving it open, you know, that we're going to be wondering going into Episode 9, like, can Kylo Ren be redeemed? And that's, you know, because he hesitated there. There is humanity left in him. Rey senses the conflict within him, just like Luke did with his father. So there's always that tension there. But again, we're going to have to wait and see how that all turns out.
But any final thoughts on Leia? Anything at all? No? Good. All right. I
feel like we said it. I feel a little emotional right now.
I know. We're all a little verklempt. All right. Let's talk about another character from the Resistance here, Poe Dameron. He has a whole subplot in this movie involving Vice Admiral Holdo, right? That's her full title. Laura Dern's character.
Before she gets her promotion.
Yeah, exactly. And he gets demoted by Leia. You know, I loved Leia and Poe's sort of dynamic in this movie, but I thought that Poe's kind of subplot about not trusting Holdo went on way too long. And this whole sort of mutiny that he basically stages, and why didn't they just say to him right from the get-go, like, here's our plan, and we're just going to keep, you know, the ship going at slow speed so we can get everyone off of it. Like, Poe's mission and his whole sort of rivalry with Holdo felt very contrived. What did you guys think?
I think it's just a sign of, it happens when you have too many characters. And it's not a bad thing, because we love the characters. I mean, Poe Dameron's a great character, and I think they didn't know what to do with him. They had to give him something to do. He's an important enough character. We have to keep him around. Hopefully he'll have more to do in Episode 9. I mean, he's got a whole comic book right now dedicated to his story. So he's a fascinating character, but this true story was around, you know, Rey and Kylo and Luke and Leia. Like, that's where the meat of the story was. Everything else was kind of secondary. We'll get into some of those other stories later. But yeah, I just felt like they didn't know what to do with him here.
Yeah, I enjoyed, you know, Poe's chemistry with Holdo. Oscar Isaac and Laura Dern. But yeah, by the time we got to the end, and yeah, they made the reveal that, like, oh, by the way, here's our plan. I was like, yeah, you could have said that at the beginning, exactly as you said, Jim.
Yeah.
So it did make it seem a little weird. Maybe I need to watch it again to see maybe if there was a reason they were withholding from him, or maybe he didn't really give them a chance to explain, because he is the hotshot pilot, and he was just going off his instincts, and his instinct was to, I don't like the sound of how this is going. It needs to change. It needs to go my way and do what I'm going to do. And so that's where the drama came from, right? Is that he was constantly talking back to authority and not listening to reason.
I got a question on this. Didn't they have that moment where he calls out Holdo, like, your plan is to abandon ship? Doesn't he kind of say that?
Yeah, he does.
One point? Then. Yeah, now I feel like we've talked ourselves out of our own thing. Like, if he already knew that, then why is it all copacetic by the end? Like, that doesn't, I don't know. I'm sure y'all who've seen the movie probably 4 times by the time you watch this will rake us over the coals for it. But yeah, I thought his sort of subplot, I like that character. I love Oscar Isaac. I think he's one of the actors of his generation. But I would like to see them sort of better define his character and give an actor of that sort of range more to play, really something to do in this one. Because ultimately, like, this whole thing was about trying to find a gas station. Like, their ship is running out of gas. It's basically the stakes for them. It was like, and they're just the slow motion pursuit of the First Order of, like, And when they run out of gas, your shills will come down and will blow up their ship. And
Well,
it's
they
like,
did give something Oscar Isaac to do, which was rub BB-8's belly like a dog.
Yeah, right.
Like, what's up, buddy?
BB-8 was so great.
That was the
Right.
best. But yeah, let's real quick talk about the scope and scale of this movie. It was actually very small. It took
Yeah.
place right after Force Awakens ended, and essentially the whole span of the movie lasted what, like a day or
Yeah,
two? It's like,
basically, yeah.
and the whole plot essentially was just chasing them from their first base to their next base. What did you guys think of how they did that? That was one thing that almost took me out of it, but I was in for it. But when I thought about it later, I was like, did that quite make as much
Couldn't
sense
they just
as it should have?
blockade them in
Yeah,
from
like-
going to Crate, and,
like-
and you could still have the awesome spaceship slicing through everybody
Yeah,
thing that
just the
Holdo
fact
pulls.
that they were like, the First Order has all these ships and these big laser cannons, and they're just shooting one cannon, one shot at a time at the fleet as it's fleeing. Why not?
Does it like jump into hyperspace? Or like it's like a little bit, or is it like I guess maybe like
Can't
the
you,
rev?
like,
You know, I don't
hit the
not a scientist.
gas, send your fighters to like swarm and take them out. Why are they following? Or was it just that lead ship was really fast at full power and a normal fighter, or they couldn't keep up or something? Like,
I know, yeah.
It
See,
was
these
such
are
a
like-
weird
It's a science,
chase.
yeah.
It did pull
Yeah.
me out of the movie a little bit because I'm like, I shouldn't be thinking about the logistics of
Yeah.
their attack plan when I'm, I want
Yeah.
to be interested in whether or not these characters make it. So I thought that section, the Poe section, and we're going to get to the other thing that we're dancing around here, weighed down that middle area of the movie where it could have had a bit more momentum. I think that is the biggest flaw in the movie, is that there is almost too much going on because, again, like Rian Johnson coming in and having to deal with all these pieces that J.J. Abrams set up in Force Awakens but didn't leave behind anywhere where they were supposed to go. And Ryan coming in and being like, we don't really need that guy anymore. We're not really going to do this. Now I have to give them something because I'm stuck with this character, but I don't really want to ship these characters or whatever. Like, you could see him sort of reverse engineering stuff that you felt like maybe JJ thought he was setting up for the next person. But also, did did you guys like Holdo's big attack?
Oh my
scene?
God!
Like,
People,
come on.
well, for now, forever call that the Holdo maneuver.
Holdo
That was
maneuver.
one of the most stunning moments of the movie. Just
beautiful,
just
yeah.
visually
Yeah.
of how that happened, and her making the sacrifice, and then the sound cuts that massive the Supremacy Snoke ship, cuts the wing off. That was insane. That was
Yeah, yeah.
amazing. I was like, why don't they weaponize ships like hyperdrive like that more often?
All right, I'm totally going to go there with the pun. I'm going to call that maneuver Holdo the Door. We're mixing all of our franchises today. Oh, please, boo. All right, let's move on from the Poe's mutiny of it all and talk about Finn's mission and the new character of Rose, who comes in and is he's partnered with her throughout the most of the story. I thought Finn's mission and his sort of subplot with Rose and the whole sequence on Canto Bight was probably the most underwhelming section of the movie to me. I thought like there were a lot of things about the Canto Bight stuff I enjoyed, but I thought ultimately it felt like a giant distraction. And I thought it kind of undercut what the character of Rose could bring to the table if their whole thing is like, we're going to go and we need to find this hacker to basically open a door, to pick a lock, is all it came down to. But she can take down this giant Imperial weapon system, or this whole thing that they can do. Like, what she can do is far more impressive than opening up a door. Like, why couldn't she have just done that? Like, I thought ultimately the DJ character to me was unnecessary, but we're going to talk, I guess, Joshua, you seem to think that it was necessary for Finn to have this whole journey so that he could kind of see the murkiness of the stakes and everything.
Yeah, as far as I think everything you said is completely valid, but I feel like there was extra flavors there's extra meaning to everything that happened with that subplot that I really liked, even though at a practical point of view, you're right, it doesn't quite make 100% sense, but it didn't need to for me. I thought ultimately what it led to was worth it, and I really enjoyed it. And that being that meeting DJ it's the scene where he shows that, hey, all these people on Canto Bight in this casino city, they're making their money off of selling weapons, not just to the First Order, but to the Resistance as well. And so he showed
Isn't
that.
Rose the one that says that though?
No, he's showing them the hologram, right?
Yeah.
And DJ, and then he's explaining that, you know, this isn't a world of black and white as Star Wars has always been, right? Like we're living in a world of gray, and he is a gray character who's sort of like helping, but also he's out for his own skin.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was like a valuable lesson. And also while on Canto Bight, I guess maybe I didn't need that for the Space Horse action scene where they
call Fathiers.
Fathiers, yes.
Yeah.
I didn't need that to go on as long as it did, but I thought being there showed a different kind of evil, right? It's not always like this unfair militaristic power. It's like excess. These like 1%ers, right, who are living a lavish life wherever other people are struggling and disenfranchised.
You called it Mos Eisley for the 1%.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then also it shows those little kids who were. They're the ones you're fighting these like Star Wars for, right? Like they're the disenfranchised. They're working while these other people, they're living in a stable where some people in the next building over are like throwing away gold coins and eating lavish foods.
See, Rose knew that though, so she clearly knew some of the same stuff that DJ did, because she's the one that imparts that wisdom to Finn. So I felt like. Why couldn't she have known both? I mean, yeah, if she's that hip to the weapons of the First Order and how to take them down, she's going to know people are selling them, or it's not like a giant secret. You know, I don't know.
I think we're going to see. I think it's one of those things we have to wait for Episode 9 and see what Benicio del Toro's character is going to do, because he's he's a big enough actor that I don't think they would just throw him in for this little bit and then we kind of forget about him in the next movie. I think he's going to play a role, because I loved when he was after he sold them out and he was walking back towards the ship, and I think Finn said like something about you're making the wrong decision or you've done the wrong thing. He's like, you might be right, but right now. My goals is to make money and to get out of the situation. But you're right, I might have made the wrong move. This may be the wrong move, and I like that gray, because that's what Luke talks about too. It's like light and dark. It's not as simple as that. There's so much stuff in between. It's so much bigger. So I'm glad that they're addressing those issues and not making it that black and white Star Wars that we've always seen.
I thought though the casting of Benicio was.
He too big of a star, you think?
Yeah, he pulled me out of the movie. I think. A character less known for playing these kind of murky characters would have been more interesting, because I love Benicio, he's a great actor, but he's got this thing for doing like vocal affectations, and so the minute I see his character and I see that he's given him a stutter, I start thinking, he's kind of doing like what he did with Usual Suspects, where he's playing this guy who's a hustler and he gives him a mumble, and it's like, so I could kind of see where they were going with that character. Not that it's funny, there's not much gray area to the gray character of DJ, but so you could see that this guy was, who they've known for 15 minutes turns out to like betray them. But to me it just kind of made Finn look like a chump, I thought, a little bit. Like, like you've only known this guy for 15 minutes and you're shocked that this guy you met in a jail cell would turn out to be an a-hole. Like, surprise, dude. Like, so I thought that Finn's mission was sort of the most underwhelming part of the movie. Let's talk about Rose, though. I really liked Kelly Marie Tran's character, and just sort of her excitement of being in this movie kind of comes through in that performance. I will say, though, I thought I didn't buy them kind of shipping her and Finn. I understand that she has like some hero worship, but she's kind of already seen through that he ain't all that. He's got some cowardice in him too. Like he will run away from the fight. So I didn't really buy the whole like, let me save your life in the end and give you a big kiss kind of thing, because I felt like maybe that is Finn's arc. That's his redemptive thing of like, I started as a stormtrooper and I'm going to save the day, save the resistance in the end. Now I don't know what they're going to do with that character. I felt like he's ultimately like, they're just kind of spinning their wheels with him. But what did you think of the Finn and Rose of it all? Did we buy that relationship?
Romance expert?
I buy his relationship with Rey more. Remember what the first thing he says after being in his coma or whatever he was in was, "Where's Rey?" Yeah. That was his first thing he said. I buy that, but the fact that just because she kissed him, I don't know if I buy that relationship. I thought it would have. I mean, not trying to get political here, but I thought at first when that woman died on the ship in the beginning, we found out that's her sister. I thought maybe they were a couple at first. I didn't know their story before I saw the movie, so I said, "Oh, that must be her girlfriend."
You need to read the back of the toy boxes.
I know, I didn't read the toy boxes. So then when I found out that was her sister, I was like, "Oh, okay." So I guess I wasn't thinking about her being in a relationship with somebody. Then once they did that, I was like, no, his focus is on Rey. When he woke up, the first thing he said is, "Where's Rey?" That's the number one thing on his mind. So I don't know. I feel like they're setting up for a little love triangle in the next one.
I don't feel a love triangle.
No.
I feel like they introduced Rose and gave them that romantic moment at the end, and then also Finn kept referring to Rey as my friend. Where's my friend? I want my friend. And then I thought it was a friend hug they had at the end, and I think that's completely fine. But yeah, that moment at the end, I think I'll have to see it again to really judge it. But that kiss, it all kind of like Finn seemed surprised by it, right? It wasn't like like both of the characters in like having a kiss together. It was more like, oh, okay, that's how you feel. That's what I saw. Like he was almost he wasn't engaged in the kiss. No. So I'm just kind of wondering like where that's going to go in the future. Like it was the start of something, but I don't know of what. Also, either of a romance or of an awkward conversation where it was like, oh look, we're just friends.
Because there was no real heat there. I mean, that was, let's just say Luke and Leia had a hotter kiss in there.
Oh my gosh.
Well, let's move. Let us know, what did you think of Finn's mission? Finn and Rose.
I'm sorry. Before can we talk about Phasma and Finn real quick?
Oh yeah. Sure.
So a lot of people, I think people are going to debate this because one of the criticisms of Force Awakens was that Phasma was like heavily promoted to be a big part of the movie, and she barely had anything to do. Yet, so in this movie, she only shows up in the end, and she's only there for a couple minutes. But I thought she had a big impact this time around, and I actually really enjoyed their big fight, and then her ultimate, like she gets the crack in the helmet.
Yeah,
so you see like her flesh, for the first time, and
in her eye, and she looks a little scared or something, a little rattled at least.
There's like, and you see like there's a woman underneath this armor. And then she dies. So I was like, whoa, that's crazy that they kill. I think she's dead. If you fall into fire, you're gone.
That's pretty much death fall, man. That's the number
Darth
one death
Maul
for all
and
villains.
Boba Fett is all I'm gonna say. Darth Maul's.
But they're dead as far as the movies are concerned.
Oh, true.
Yeah. But I think if you fall into a pit of fire, you're dead. And also, I'm gonna say this: when they shot her, the laser bolt glanced off her armor just like it was nothing. Why did they give that armor to the stormtroopers? I'm sure it's some weird rare metal, but don't you think that would be a little more practical?
Look, you got to earn that. She's Captain Phasma. If you're, grunt number 4721 or whatever, your ass is cannon.
Yeah.
I think we all know that. All right, what did you guys think of Finn's mission, Finn and Rose? Finn and Phasma in that fight. That was a cool fight, but that was it for Phasma, we think. Let us know in the comments. Let's move on from that. Canto Bight was a new world. It also introduced some new creatures that we talked about there. I believe they're called the Fathers. Let's just call them space horses. Space race horses. And then we also, of course, had Porgs on Ahch-To and the Caretakers. And then the Vulptexes, is that how you Yeah.
The Ice Foxes.
Yeah, on Crate. What did you think of these new creatures? Did you guys like them? David, let's start with you.
I mean, the Porgs, it's a toy seller. They're cute. I'll admit they're cute. I mean, I like cute animals just as much as the next person, but they don't add. I don't think they. I know. They don't. It doesn't add to the story. I mean, there's the Ewoks. The Ewoks did something. I mean, the Ewoks, they
pro Ewok.
Yeah, I'm pro Ewok. I like the Ewoks. They contributed. They use the nature to help defeat the stormtroopers there on Endor.
Humans?
They have the heads playing the drums with them. I mean, it's okay. But the Porgs just
they're like a guerrilla army, man.
Yeah, they're cute.
I thought. Here's the thing. Going into the movie, I agree. I was over Porgs before I even saw the movie. I thought people they've way too in on Porgs, and there's all this Porg merchandise. I was over it. Yet, when Chewbacca was grilling the Porgs and eating them, we all made jokes about that, thinking it would never happen. That actually endeared me to the Porgs because I was like,
their little reactions.
Yeah, and they're like shaking and stuff. That was hilarious. And also, I think it also showed that Star Wars is not going to be like, they're not too precious about the Porgs, right? They're also going to treat them like a real animal, like on this island. And I do think maybe the movie could have had maybe like 40% less porgs because it got a little much where they were like everywhere, and also have, like porg reaction shots, or like they're climbing the cliff and you can see the porgs flying around. Then they're like they've infested the Millennium Falcon and stuff, and maybe a little less, but
they were like the Tribbles on Star Trek.
Yeah, I did enjoy them ultimately. I thought they were nice, and they for a movie that had so much drama and action and stuff. Every time you saw a porg, it was a nice like moment of levity.
And it's good for the kids too. I mean, frankly, Star Wars is made for children first and foremost. That's right from George Lucas's mouth, and I think that's little kids are going to love that. That being said, Robot Chicken or Family Guy, somebody is going to do the scene of Chewbacca capturing, killing, beheading, and cooking a porg. That scene is coming from somebody. What did you think of the Crystal Fox things? Because they look really cool in the trailer, and then in the end, they're really just sort of a device to get out of the cave.
I thought they were fine. They were cool. They were different when they moved. You could hear like the icicles like clinking against each other. I thought it was like a different, weird, like wondrous animal, kind of like an Alolan Vulpix if anyone plays Pokemon. I mean, I thought they were great. I don't really have. I don't think they were supposed to be more than that. They were just this like indigenous species on the planet, and they played a small, interesting, kind of cute role.
Wouldn't a toy of that be kind of annoying because it'd
be dangerous? Yeah, it'd be like 12 and up or something.
Your hands come away with all these like scratches and stuff.
Yeah, you'd be like, I don't like this thing.
I don't want to spoil too much from Star Wars Rebels this season, but there is a wolf type creature in that season as well, in the newest season of Star Wars Rebels that's going on right now, and they're kind of used as guides as a way too, like in the same way. And
I think I know the thing.
Yeah, if you saw the trailer, any of the Star Wars Rebels trailers for the season, you saw those wolves in action. They're much bigger, and they're a different breed, but it's similar. Yeah, so I'm fine with them.
I was not nuts about the space horses. I didn't think the effect was that good. I thought like their facial effect, like it was a little Narnia-esque to me, and I don't think it's going to age as well as some of the other effects. Like the porgs, you bought more just because they're sort of ridiculous looking, and they're sort of I don't know. They look like toys to begin with, so I think their fakeness kind of works for them as an effect. Whereas the horse stuff, in that we're in 2017, almost 2018, and a movie has yet to convince me when somebody is faking riding a horse. All those scenes, they still look fake, like actors just on the thing. Like it just, I don't know. I thought that the effects of that didn't really work.
Yeah, and they were all CG, right? Yeah, and then they had almost like, not quite anthropomorphic, but they had like an expressive face, and I think that's what they were trying to. That's why they went CG, to make them a little more emotive. But you're right, it wasn't the best.
But also too, like I think it speaks to the one of the messages is there's definitely a don't eat animals message in this movie, or don't mistreat animals message. So that was pretty clear.
Porgs taste great.
But I will say my favorite outside of the porgs were the caretakers, and I loved their whole sort of like frustration
of
dealing like
so
with Rey every time. Like that was a nice way to like keep humor in those Rey and Luke scenes without it being necessarily always about the teacher-student humor. So I like that. We want to know, what did you guys think of the new creatures in Star Wars: The Last Jedi? Will you buy the merch? Do you like them? Let us know in the comments. I think that's gonna about do it for this here Star Wars: The Last Jedi spoiler cast. It's not all we're ever going to talk about this movie. We got a lot more stuff coming up. Check out our review of the film by Joshua Yale here, and check out our explainer piece on the ending of the film and what that means. And of course, as always, be sure to follow and subscribe on whatever platform you like to watch IGN.